I'm blessed to be here, though, and Kathy and I have been doing a little bit of camping, and we got out in the mornings and in the evenings, and we stayed in the afternoons with that air on full blast. Kathy says, I don't like camping, I like glamping. So we have air conditioning in our camper. So we were glad for it this week, I'll tell you. And last week we began a new 6-week series for you that maybe weren't here last week, entitled Marriage and Family. We realize we have so many young families, so many married folks, and people getting married, people wanting to be married, people that want nothing to do with it. And so we thought, this would be a good time to do a marriage and family series where we plan to minister to singles and marrieds and parents and anyone who loves family. Last week was part 1 of what has become a 2-part teaching entitled Training Children with Bents. We got about halfway through it last week, and we began with a truism, and you have the same outline as you had last week, and I'll just bring you up to speed here with a very short review. We began with a truism from the Bible found in Proverbs 22:6, direct your children onto the right path, and when they're older, they will not leave it. A truism, if you'll remember, is not a promise, but it means this is what you can expect. If we train up our children in the ways of the Lord, when they get a little bit older, when they reach puberty, when they can grow hair on their face, when they can procreate, when they can, begin to make a life for their own at some point, they will not depart, they will not leave the path that they were trained up in. That's what we can expect. It's not a promise. The grassroots of rearing children, our primary task, we discovered last week, is knowing our child. We as parents, grandparents too, jump in there, and aunts and uncles, it's good when we know our children. I'll explain that in a moment. And after knowing the Lord for ourselves, we need to know who they are, how God made them. He created them. How many know God created your children? He created you and He created your children. And so a possible paraphrase that we put in your outline is, train your children in the ways of the Lord and His Word. Adjust the training so that it is in keeping with the child's individual giftings or bents, the God-given characteristics built in at birth. And as maturity comes, your children will not leave the training received. For the sake of simplicity, we're calling a child's giftings bents, their mannerisms, their interests, their abilities, their skills, the individual God-given things that are a part of God's recipe as He fashioned them, as He created them, as the potter began to fashion them and mold them. So in your outline, for a parent's training to be successful, it must be in keeping with the child's God-given bents. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but we began to understand, though there was no condemnation last week, and I had parents come up and say, thank you for not killing me, because I didn't understand what you taught this morning, Pastor, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. And thank God that we have a redemptive God that we serve who is redeeming. And if you're a mom or a dad and your kids are grown, or they're having their own children, or you're having great-grandchildren, if you're alive, you still have influence. And you still have an ability to minister to your children who may be, we've got people here who've got children that are 50, 60, 65, 70. I'll stop there because then you'll all know who you are. But getting way up there. But for a parent's training to be successful, it must be in keeping with the child's given bents. The next thing in your outline, if parents were to ask, what is the greatest gift we could give our young child? An answer would be a sensitive spirit. So for you to have a sensitive spirit and to pass that on to your children, by sensitive spirit, we can help them know who they are and discuss that with them as they develop and they become not sensitive in a negative way, but sensitive to the Spirit of God that is working and moving in their lives. What are the things that I should open my eyes to see and perk up my ears to hear while training and knowing our children? 1, bent towards good, and 2, bent toward evil. We discussed last week Psalms 139 and discovered that God foreknew every man or woman he ever created. I want to just hone in on this for one more moment before we press on to the second part of this message. See, I want you to understand this. Men and women sin and they do wrong, but God never makes mistakes. For anyone here that needs to hear this, you are not a mistake. You are not an oops. Mother Nature did not make you, not fate, not even a biological combination of mother and dad, though God uses that. Remember, He is still the Creator. There's no exception, and God takes full responsibility, and He's not ashamed of His workmanship. The Lord made each of us. God interwove our person with our bodies and made us exactly as He would have us be. And we should know that our children have been put together in an altogether unique fashion like no one else on earth, even if you have quadruplets. Each one is his own or her own person, and they long to be known as God made them. Some of you are sitting here and you're thinking, yeah, but, and I would just say, no buts. God has a plan, and He foreknew you before you were ever in your mother's womb. Your arrival, no matter how wonderful or horrible it might be, does not mean that God did not plan and foreknow you for His glory, for His purpose. God has a plan for every person. He has a purpose to give Him glory and honor, to minister to people that I could never minister to, but you could. It's important that when they come up against the pressures of the times they're living in, that our kids are able to stand firm in who they are, because our parents know our children. And when they're known by a parent, they can then know who they are in God. They'll not need any peer pressure to give them their standard. They won't need people around them their age to tell them who they are and who they're not. When they have parents that know their children, take the time to learn how God made them and fashioned them and created them. And then we threw in last week, he made 2 kinds, male and female. End of story, period. And this is the parent's primary and most important job. Let's apply this and look a little further. I want to reach back in your outline and get you out of order for a second and reach back to Psalms 139 and verse 16. And I want to read that as we go forward today. You saw me before I was born. When did the Lord see you? Before you were born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. That's an interesting verse to me, that God has a book where He's recording every day of our lives, including our children. Every day is recorded. God has a plan, and wise is the parent that latches onto that plan. This takes prayer. Hey, if you're going to latch onto the plan of God for your children and be the mom or dad and attempt, and you're not going to be perfect, I'll tell you. There are no perfect parents. And there are no perfect children. We're all working this out. We're all trusting the Lord and putting our best foot forward, trusting and praying. And, you know, if we're going to be a wise parent that latches on to the plan of God for our children, I'm going to tell you, it takes time, it takes prayer, It takes time alone with God. Let me tell you, it takes some concentration and it takes some thought life. It takes observation and then responding instead of reacting. We need to do more responding and less reacting. And this takes intentional care and love. If you notice, the world system out here that we live in tries to tell you that you don't have time for a thought life. You don't have time for a prayer life. You don't have time for reflection. You don't have time to pray and consider, and downtime and quiet time. The noise floor of the world is so high. Early in the life of the child, we'll see things emerging. We'll notice that some of our children by nature are very careful. Others are not careful at all. I remember learning that about Reese and Riley. Reese would measure and figure out, all right, if I jump off this cliff, will I live? How am I going to handle this? Riley would jump off and then think, okay, let's see, how am I going to figure this out on the way down? Some children will spend 15 minutes getting all their blocks lined up perfectly. The next child will come by with the same blocks and fling them everywhere. When some kids put things up, they do it with great order. They'll match all the shoes and the socks. Some kids will just put it all together. There are not too many children like that, but there are a few. There are some that if their clothes make it to their room, it's a miracle. There are some kids that if they can find their bed by bedtime, it'll be amazing. For us to think that all of our kids will be alike is asking for trouble. I just want to make a little point while we have a little fun. To think that our kids are all going to be alike is just asking for trouble. God doesn't make us alike. In your outline, early in life, we begin to see things emerge in our children. So we as parents need to begin cooperating with what we see emerging. Think about and discuss what you notice about your children. Some are coordinated, some are competitive, some are physically gifted, some are creative, some are artistic, some are messy. Messy seems to go along with artistic, I'll just say that. Of course, all types of kids must clean up their room when they're told to do so. Let me tell you that again. Let me add that balance. When mom and dad says it's time to clean up the room, they don't get to hide behind their artistic value. Clean up your room. If one of the rules of your house is that at no time can there ever be a mess, then it will be difficult for a child who is creative to be clean at the same time. So, I was thinking about that. Reese and Riley are so gifted in so many different ways, and I wouldn't trade one for the other. I love them both. I don't love them the same, because loving them the same would not be right. Would not be fair. Life's not fair. Life wouldn't be appropriate. Reese needs love from Dad in many different ways than Riley needs love from me. And to be straight up about it, with my kids, my siblings, my sisters, in the natural, it's easier for me to, quote, love's the wrong word, like some over others because of the different bents that we have. And I've realized something. Many times the ones that I struggle with are the ones that I even need more in my life because they're less like me sometimes. I'm so glad I married a woman that's not me. It'd be awful to be married to a Tim Bowman. I need someone who is a completer, and we help each other. Each of us brings something to the table that we both need. Together, I don't mean to brag, together in God we can be an awesome force if we work together. I think of Reese when he was young. He loved a tidy room. We rarely had to tell him to clean up his room. He liked everything in order. Riley, I was thinking about this the other day. When he decides to cook a meal in the house, get ready for an award-winning meal, because he puts everything he's got into this cooking experience. He studies it, he measures it. I mean, he does in-depth studies on the internal temperature of certain things and how long it sets and how long and I mean, the guy literally drives himself nuts because he wants it award-winning meal. And man, when he's done cooking, you have got yourself a fabulous 5-star restaurant meal a lot of times. Not every time, but most of the time. But when he leaves the kitchen, I don't think I'm exaggerating. Riley, are you here this morning? Where are you, Riley? Huh? Oh, he's going to be in second service. I thought he was coming to first, Kath. All right. He changed his mind. He's creative. When he leaves the kitchen after that meal, there's grease on the cupboards. The floor has, I don't know what, onion peels. It looks like a tornado come through that kitchen. Dishes. That kid will use every dish in the kitchen to cook a meal, every dish. And I've had to learn, okay, this is going to be worth it. And then I've tried to tell him, hey, if you're going to do this for mom and dad once in a while and we love it, will you go all the way? And before you go to bed, that kitchen needs to look like something. And I've had to learn, if I'm going to have my son use his incredible gifts, that with it comes, now, yesterday we were at the camper, and I told Kathy, because I don't do very much domestic stuff very well, and I'm not around that much, and I told Kathy, I said, I want you to sit there, and I want you to relax, and I made her a cup of coffee, and don't praise me. I don't do this very well, so I deserve nothing. But I said, I'm going to cook you breakfast, and you're going to sit there, and I'm going to serve you, and I'm going to cook lunch while I'm cooking breakfast, and I'm going to do all the dishes, and you're going to sit there. And she said, okay. And now here's me. I can't stand dirty dishes. So as I get through with something, I'm washing it, rinsing it, putting it in the basket, and then cooking, and I'm cleaning. And when I get done cooking, the whole little kitchen in the camper is all done, except for whatever we're eating on, because I can't stand to have that all piled up. I mean, to me, and my bent is, who wants to have a wonderful meal and have to look at that? How many are wired a little bit like that, like me? All right. How many are not like me at all? Yeah, see, we're all different, right? We're all different. All right, so I'm going to quit and move on. Do you get the point? So, children that are creative have a need to whatever they're creating, they have a need to get it all over them. The very meticulous parent that doesn't want anything out of place will have a hard time training up a creative kid. Parents, we need to find those God-given and God-made strengths in our children and reach down inside of them and nurture those things. We've got to make room for things to happen in our children's lives. In your outline, yes, they need to obey mom and dad. Yes, they need to obey mom and dad. They need to honor mom and dad, honor their father and mother. But we need to have insight as to how we nurture them with their bents given to them by God. Let me say that. Their bents are given to them by God. I thank God that my dad saw some things, and my dad wasn't perfect, but my dad saw some things in me and began to reach down into me and unleash some things I didn't even know were in me. God can use a father to unleash some things in their children. What did my dad see? He saw a little bit of how God knit me together in my mother's womb. Some kids are made to paint, and some are made for the violin. Some are made to jump around and have tremendous coordination. Some are so strong, and some are not so strong. What do we do with good bents? We cooperate with it. That's what we do. What we should not do is try to live out our dreams, our own personal dreams of what we wanted to be through the lives of our children. God, help us not do that. Instead, we cooperate with God's design for them. Now let's go back to Psalms 51, because there's not only good bents, but there's the bent toward bad as well. And I'm sad to tell you this, but our precious babies are marked with sin. I thought about having a shield in front of me while I talk about this next section here, because I know there's some mamas here that are, their dander's going to get up here a little bit, but it's all right, Mom, you need to hear this. It's true of all babies that have ever been born on this earth. Psalms 51:5, for I was born a sinner. Yes, from the moment my mother conceived me, we were born with a sinful nature that was there from the moment of our conception. So far, I've never seen a parent have to train their kids to do bad. Most parents need to train their children to do. We were born with a sinful nature. That does not necessarily mean that the act of conception was wrong or sinful. It means from the time of conception, there was a nature passed on that was sinful through the bloodline that's all the way back to Adam. The Amplified Bible captures the thought, Psalms 51:5, I was brought forth in a state of wickedness. In sin, my mother conceived me, and from my beginning, I too was sinful. There's another verse found in Psalms 58:2-3. No, you plot injustice in your hearts. You spread violence throughout the land. These wicked people are born sinners. Even from birth, they have lied and gone their own way. So let me put it this way in your outline. Does sin happen when they start school or start hanging around with some wrong kids? No. They're wicked from birth. I'm just cutting to the chase. They're wicked from birth. I know that sounds terrible, but we need to understand. Psalms 58, verse 4 and 5, the next two verses, they spit venom like deadly snakes. They are like cobras that refuse to listen. I can feel that some of you are relating to your children right now. Ignoring the tunes of the snake charmers, no matter how skillfully they play. That's pretty vivid. Our children never had to be taught what it means to do wrong. They come by that naturally. The Adamic bent, or the universal depravity of mankind. With all the good in your outline and the cultivation that goes on with making the good come to life, I assure you that your child, I'm not trying to run people out of here. I want to just be honest with you. Your child has an evil bent. And this calls for counteraction. If not, we're all in big trouble. If you don't counteract this situation when your child was born into sin and you don't counteract it, we're all in big trouble. Huge. We're in big trouble. It's interesting, and I'll tell you when we're back to the outline, so just relax for a moment. It's interesting that Dr. Albert Siegel said in the Stanford Observer, here's what he said. When it comes to rearing children, every society is only 20 years away from barbarism. 20 years is all we have to accomplish the task of civilizing the infants who were born in our midst each year. He said, these savages know nothing of our language, our culture, our religion, our values, or our customs, or interpersonal relations. The infant is totally ignorant about communism, democracy, civil liberties, etc. They know nothing of respect, decency, honesty, customs, or manners. The barbarian must be tamed, writes Albert Siegel, if civilization is to survive. The Minnesota Crime Commission released a report a number of years ago, which in part reads this. It says, every baby starts life as a little savage. They're completely selfish and self-centered. I know that's hard to say about my little Eliza. But the truth is, she was born selfish and self-centered. They want what they want when they want it, their bottle, mother's attention, playmates, toy, grandpa's watch, whatever it is, they want it when they want it. Deny these, and often they seethe with rage and aggressiveness, which would be murderous were they not so helpless. This means that all children, not just some children, are born delinquent. This means if permitted to continue in the self-centered world of infancy, given free rein to their impulsive actions, every child would grow up a criminal, a thief, a killer, maybe a rapist. Now that article is pretty straightforward. What do we do and how do we respond to the evil bent in our children? Parents, we must counteract. We dare not leave it alone. Back to your outline. Too many parents have chosen to leave evil bents alone. That's why we hear about 10-year-olds in the news planning the death of their parents, or 12-year-olds committing terrible crimes that are difficult to believe that a 12-year-old could do what they did. Some of these kids orchestrate these crimes in a way that reflect a genius in the realm of wrong. What do we do? In your outline, let me give you some things that we do. We lead our children to a knowledge of Jesus Christ by helping them to understand the gospel. You can't save your kids, but we are to share the gospel until they know the gospel, the good news, and how much that Jesus loves them. I believe we need to start instilling that. And folks, here's a sad truth in America today. If you ask most adults in America, define for me the gospel. How would you truly define the very heart of the gospel of Jesus Christ? And many adults who attend church services could not do it. And our kids need to be able to, we need to rehearse the gospel with our kids until they can tell it back to us and understand it. And hopefully from more with head knowledge, but it drops down into their heart. What is the gospel? What is the good news? The hope is that their spiritually dead nature would be transformed and given life, the lifeblood of Jesus Christ. The hope is that moms and dads, you can't save them, but you can lead them to the Lord and lead them to salvation at that moment when God reaches down and transforms their heart and they find themselves repenting. Never forget when I was saved as a young boy, my dad was preaching. I was sitting on the front row, Tammy, about where you are. And all of a sudden, the Spirit of God just came all over me. And I can't even explain it, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I was a little boy, and I just started sobbing as I realized Jesus died for me, and it became real to me. It wasn't just head knowledge, but it became just so real to me. And my dad caught it. And he stopped the service, and he said, I'll be back with you in a few moments. And he came down, and we knelt down together, and Dad led me to the Lord while everybody else was like, what's going on? Dad decided not to miss that moment. Second, our children must learn to respect authority. If possible, we teach them to love to obey. To love to obey. Our children learn that it's really freedom to keep the rules. I would say in your home there shouldn't be too many rules, but there should be a few. My mentor told me, don't hide behind so many rules, Mom and Dad. Strong leaders don't need a lot of rules. They need just a few. And if you have a few rules, be willing to die for those. Weak leaders have to have a lot of rules because they're unwilling to talk, confront, discuss, discipline. You know, it's really a free society when the rules are obeyed and the law is kept. We're seeing a little bit of what happens in America when you relax the rules and you don't hold high regards for the law. Third, we deal with wrong as it appears, and we're consistent with it until the child learns that wrong pays an awful wage. We don't back off and say, I just can't. I heard a mom say one time, I just can't do anything with this 5-year-old. I can't do anything with him. And I'm thinking, dear God, do something with that 5-year-old, or I don't want to be on the planet in 10 years with that child. Boy, I'm tempted to have some fun right now, but I'm going to let it go because my fun won't be fun for some mom here. I better respect you, Mom, on what I do. All right, I remember Proverbs 29 that says a child left brings shame to their parents. Don't leave your kids alone. Don't leave them alone in their sin and their evil bent and their bad. I remember Proverbs 20 that a seeing eye and a hearing ear, the Lord has made both of them. I am to open them both up and go to work. The Lord gives us ears. He gives us eyes. I was convinced somehow that my dad knew everything I was doing at every moment of every day, no matter where I was, no matter how far away he was. He had some kind of way to know exactly what I was doing. Today, I'm thankful for it. Some parents say this. Here's what some parents say. It doesn't make that much difference. After all, kids are kids, and they'll turn out pretty good somehow. My parenting skills do not make much difference, Pastor. And I beg to differ with you. It does make a difference. The child learns when bad is not counteracted that bad pays off good dividends and disobedience has rewards. Please do not let your children think that bad pays good dividends and has rewards. How does a child learn a good attitude and the willingness to respond well to authority? Here it is in your outline. How does a child learn a good attitude and the willingness to respond well to authority? Let me tell you how. They will learn it from their mom and dad, or most probably they will not learn it. Tragically, There are few that learn it some other way, from a future wife or a husband. But usually they'll wreck that marriage or home in the process. Or if they don't learn it from mom and dad, there's a possibility somewhere down the road. They might learn it from a friend or a pastor or an elder or a spiritual leader or a true godly friend. But they may go through several friends before they get to one strong enough or patient enough to help them through the process. I'm not a perfect pastor, and I've made many mistakes in life, but I have tried to help people, give them my very best, and they will not listen. At that point, at least, they can't hear it. They won't listen. They won't humble themselves and repent. The walls go up. They do no wrong. They defer the attention to somebody else, to some other situation. They can be wrong, 10,000 pounds wrong, and they'll shoot you if you're 1 ounce wrong. Parents, by God's grace, take some time and determine your priorities. Record your observations and discuss them with your children. Do it now. Do it now. They're growing every day. They're learning to fly from their nest every day. Your time is short. I can almost hear some older parents that kids are gone. I can almost hear some of you shouting at me, "Tell them, Pastor, if they've got kids at home, tell them." If you're too busy to listen to your kids, to spend time with them, to observe, to pray for them, you're too busy. We only got those kids for a moment. Well, you've been kind to me as I've shared. You've most likely been reminded of some insights that you've not thought of for a while, or maybe you've never thought of in your life. Some of you are here, maybe you have feelings of guilt. It's possible that some may resent some things that you heard me say, and you don't agree. To you, I would say this: until you can defend a better plan from Scripture, meditate on these things. Think about them. Where are you spending your time, Mom and Dad? What are you doing with your 24 hours? When's the last time the television turned off all evening? When's the last discussion you had with your teenager or your preteen? When's the last time we shut the phones down for an evening and sit in the living room and looked at each other until somebody talked? When was the last time you decided to forget the urgent and do something important? Like, listen, nobody can do that for us, for you, for me. Jesus came to wash away the confusion that's in our world so we can see our priorities in life. For God so loved you that he gave his Son, and if you believe in him, you'll not perish but have everlasting life. We're not through, parents. We're not through. We're not through. And I want to tell you, I want to remind you all of something. There's hope, even if you're getting started way late. There's hope. If there's not hope, I should preach my last message. If there's no hope in Jesus for wherever you are and your family is and your children, this should be my last message. Because everything we're doing is a hoax. But wherever you are, wherever we are in life, there's hope in Jesus. Let's pray. Lord, I pray you will help each of us who wear the title Mom or Dad. The entrance of your word has brought light to us, and sometimes the laser beam of truth bites deeply into where we live. Pain comes at those times, so I pray for any parent today who has come to realize that the plan they've adopted for living is not God's plan. If they've come to realize that, Lord, and I pray that you would graciously yet firmly bring them to their knees as they accept what is hard to declare. We need your help. Then, Father, I pray you will lead them in a renewed relationship at home as their hearts are made right with you. God, you said in your word that if we would ask for wisdom, that you wouldn't hold it back from us, but you would give it to us. And as our children go through the various stages of life, from infancy, Lord, to toddlers, to young ones, to preteens, to teenagers, to 20-something, every season brings on new challenges and new rewards if we do life your way. Help us as parents to know our children. In your name, amen. God bless you all. Hope to see you for baptism Wednesday night. I love water baptism. It's going to be good.